Okay, boys and girls, we have now made it to chapters 19 and 20 of the book 11 by Tom Rogers, and I'm going to be picking up with chapter 19. Now listen to the time. It's at 12 o'clock noon. All right, now our last chapter was also exactly at 12 o'clock noon, and it was called Questions, and the last chapter was Questions, and that was when Alex found out that the World Trade Centers were hit and that they had collapsed, and he had just got this information and he's trying to process it, and he found out from the vet who took care of Radar, the dog. Now, exactly at 12 o'clock noon, there's a new chapter called Mac. Now, this is going to be a third character that we're going to be following. It's a third timeline that we'll be following. So now he's being introduced into our story. Now, because this is 12 o'clock noon, where in Mac's timeline, Alec had just had 12 o'clock noon for the chapter called Questions, where he just found out about the World Trade Center. And the man in the white shirt, his timeline, the last time we read about him was 10:24 a.m. So that was about an hour and a half prior to this. So now we're with Mac, chapter 19. Again, this is a third timeline now that we're going to have to process. All right, so I'll do my best to keep you understanding the three different timelines as we go. All right, so let's go ahead and start into the book. Chapter 19, Mac, 12 o'clock noon. Across town, in a little house that looked a lot like Alex's, an old man sat in his den, watching the disaster unfold on TV. Like Alex, people all over the world that day, his head was full of questions. He was desperate for news and searching for answers. His name was McKnight. Everyone called him Mac. His grown son, Bobby, called him Pop. Mac's wife, Bobby's mother, was a retired school teacher named Dottie. After she stopped teaching, Dottie had kept herself busy volunteering at the library until Alzheimer's clouded her brain and left her unable to take care of herself. Now she sat by the television all day, smiling sweetly and watching SpongeBob. All right, let me explain to you about the disease Alzheimer's, because it might be a disease that you might not have heard about. This is a disease that takes, usually elderly people might get it, and it's where they start to forget things about what happened in the past. Sometimes it could be just things that just happened recently. So what's happening is she's elderly, and she is not remembering a lot of things. So it sounds to me like Mac is taking care of his wife, Dottie, who lives with him, and she entertains herself by watching cartoons, okay? When Dottie first grew ill, Mac had struggled to provide the care she needed. Mac didn't complain, but Bobby knew it was hard on his dad. His father would never admit it, but he was lonely. So even though Bobby was in his mid-30s, he gave up his Manhattan apartment and moved back home. He told his dad it was to help take care of his mom, but the truth is that Mac needed Bobby just as much as Dottie did. So that tells me about the character of Bobby, the son. He lives with the mom and dad, and he helps to take care of the mom, but he's also there for his dad because he knows his dad is very lonely. Because since his wife has Alzheimer's, it's hard for him to really have conversations with her because she's of a childlike mind, and so she forgets things a lot. And so Bobby's there to take care of his dad and his mom. Now every morning, Mac would rise early to put on a pot of coffee, and Bobby would come down in his clean white shirt, his tie loosened and sleeves unbuttoned. "Good morning, Pop," he'd say. "What's so good about it?" Mac would grumble. It was their little joke, part of their morning routine. Then father and son would quietly read the paper and sip their coffee together before Bobby would rise, pat his Pop on the shoulder, and head off to ride the commuter train into Manhattan. So that might be the train that is what Alex's dad drives. So it looks like he might be one of his passengers. All right, let's keep going. Bobby worked in the World Trade Center. Wait a minute. Bobby works in the World Trade Center, and so he might have been at work that day. Let's find out. Now a single question ran through Mac's head over and over. Would his son be coming home? So it sounds to me like Mac also has questions in his mind as well. All right, let's move on to chapter 20, the man in the white shirt. Look at the time. It's 12 o'clock noon. So now we have fast forwarded from his 10:30 time that we last had him with, and now we are up to the 12 o'clock noon. So it sounds to me like all of these timelines are all in sync. Alec, 12 o'clock, he found out about the World Trade Center's collapsing from the vet. 12 o'clock noon is where we met Mac sitting in his house watching the news, trying to find out if his son might be coming home. And then 12 o'clock noon is the man in the white shirt, which is chapter 20. Here we go. Chapter 20, 12 o'clock noon. The man in the white shirt helped the cop lower another injured victim onto a plastic chair. They were inside a makeshift medical tent that had been set up just beyond the disaster zone. He and the cop had somehow become a team. This was their 5th person they carried over from West Broadway. The injured man tried to thank them, but a nurse told them to move so she could take the man's vital signs and check his wounds. The man in the white shirt stepped back to let her do her job. A voice on the cop's radio cut through the static. The cop paused to listen, then ran back to the street and disappeared around a corner, headed south. She was gone before the man in the white shirt could say goodbye. Only then did he realize he didn't even know the cop's name. All right, I want to make an inference right there. All of a sudden, the cop that he was helping, she heard a voice, listened, and disappeared around the corner and headed south. And she was gone before he could even get her name. So something might have happened where maybe she had to leave because she had somebody close to her. Maybe she found out about that, needed to go get help. That is my prediction. Okay, let's keep going. The man in the white shirt stepped outside. Suddenly, he felt very, very alone. His hands began to tremble, and his legs started to quiver. He sat down heavily on the curb. At first, he thought that it was a muscle fatigue from carrying all those injured people. He just needed a moment to rest. Then his eyes started to burn. He blinked, and a warm tear rolled down his cheek. What he needed wasn't rest. He needed his family. He needed to go home. All right, we still don't know who the man in the white shirt is. Predictions are it could either be Bobby, the son of Mac, because he was talking about his son going to work in the World Trade Center, and he'd always have a white shirt on clean every day when he'd go to work. But we also can remember back to the chapter when earlier in the book where Alec was talking about his dad in a white shirt coming home from work. And so it could be either one of those two. We don't know. We'll find out later on in the story. But, okay, we're going to stop there for today. Have a good night, and we will see. We'll pick up again tomorrow with chapter 21 called Crossing the Bridge.